Hello everyone, it's me Bryson P, and we have made it this far into our adventure on YouTube with all of the mail and information and other videos that I've made, but I've not heard anything about there being a completely Russian town in Norway. And since I'll be traveling to Norway, of course just southern part, really Oslo, I figured this would be a good time for us to learn more about it. So we're going to jump right into it, and then at the end of this video I will have some more information about my upcoming trip to Scandinavia, and then in my next video I will have an actual true update on my itinerary and some extra information for my upcoming trip to Scandinavia. Here we go, let's find out why there's a completely Russian town in Norway. Before I start, this video is by Half As Interesting, and you could check out their channel below in the description. Also, a link to this original video is in the description as well.
This video was made possible by me. That's right, I'm advertising for myself. It's like a pyramid scheme where every block in the pyramid is me. This whole episode is a sneaky promo for my podcast, Extremities, available at extremitiespodcast.com. You'll see what I mean at the end. This is Bernsberg, a Russian town. It has Russian stores, Russian schools, Russian money, and Russian people who speak, you guessed it, Russian. I want to be clear, this town doesn't just have a lot of Russians in it. It isn't like a Russian equivalent of Chinatown. It is an entirely Russian town, entirely owned by the Russian government. It's as Russian as Vladimir Putin drinking vodka out of a Matryoshka doll. So why then, you have to wonder, is this Russian town in Norway? This is Norway, home to Norwegians?
I have a question already, but I'm waiting until I get to a part where I can ask my question a little bit better.
Now, that cool electric guitar-shaped area down there is probably what you normally think of when you think of Norway. And you might be wondering, what's up with that weird jagged island up at the top that you also highlighted? Is that also part of Norway? Did you make a mistake? Of course not. As I'm sure you know, every part of every HI video ever is totally 100% accurate, always no exceptions. That area up there is also part of Norway. It's called Svalbard, and that's where Bernsberg is. Right here. When Svalbard was discovered in the late 16th century...
Okay. Since this video is a couple of years old, I believe, I'd have to go back and actually look at when it is. But given the current condition of the world, and the current economic, sanctions and everything else with the invasion of Ukraine, let's just put it blunt and forward, how is that affecting this section? And I believe, I can't think of the name of it. I believe I actually know where this is going. I seen a video recently by another channel called Yes Theory, I believe. They went to this island, and I cannot remember the other part, but there's another city over here, and I believe it's a mining city, basically. A mining towns, and that's the only people that live there.
Lots of different countries had lots of different opinions on who should own it, and in the end,
I believe, let me get this correct here. If my information serves me correct from the video that I've seen a while back by Yes Theory, that area up north, it is owned by Norway. However, there's a treaty, and that treaty basically was signed by a bunch of different countries, including North Korea as one of them. But it basically says that anyone who is willing to come here and establish a community, basically, or is willing to come here, they have, unlimited access to the natural minerals. I believe is what I remember.
Conflict was solved the same way many great conflicts are solved, by never addressing the problem and pretending like everything is fine until it isn't, kind of like climate change. Functionally, that meant Svalbard was open to everyone under the old maritime principle of mare liberum, which is Latin for free seas, or it might be Latin for horse library. I don't really know, my Latin isn't great. For the next few hundred years, several countries would whale and later mine in Svalbard, but over time, the question of who owned Svalbard kept coming up. That question was finally answered after World War I, when the countries at the Paris Peace Conference all came together, and in between answering questions like, should we call it the League of Nations or the Justice League, and how can we best set things up for another worse war 19 years from now, they asked who should get Svalbard, to which Norway said, us. To which the other countries said, yeah, sure, I don't care, why not? This deal, though, came with quite a lot of conditions. Norway would be allowed to own Svalbard and enforce Norwegian laws, but any country that was party to the treaty was allowed to set up shop and use Svalbard's natural resources. Also, any citizen of any country party to the treaty had to be allowed to come to Svalbard anytime they wanted and stay as long as they wanted, no visa required.
That's
Later,
right.
Norway expanded this privilege to everyone, even if they weren't from a country that signed the treaty, making Svalbard the only place in the world, apart from MasterCard's HQ, that's completely visa-free. Which brings us...
I would assume that answers the question, right? Of kind of like the economic conditions, what I was asking as far as right now with Russia and everything going on. That should answer the question that there really isn't much interference in this section.
As to how a Russian town ended up in Svalbard, a Norwegian island. Well, technically archipelago. See, Russians had been in Svalbard as long as anyone, starting sometime between 1425 and the later 1600s. I know that's a long gap, but hey, archaeology is hard, okay? Anyway, starting somewhere in that time, a group of Russian hunter-trappers called the Pomoroi had been traversing between northern Russia and Svalbard to do what hunter-trappers do best. Play Pictionary. No, sorry, I misread that. They hunted and trapped. Those were the first Russians on Svalbard, but they certainly weren't the last. In the 1930s, the Soviet Union decided to take advantage of that anyone can use our resources clause of the Svalbard Treaty, and they bought a mining town called Barentsburg from the Dutch, which is of course the town you'll remember from the beginning of the video. You're paying attention, right? Of course you are. When has anyone ever not paid close attention to a YouTube video? Because they were party to the Svalbard Treaty, the Soviet Union was allowed to have a mining settlement in Svalbard, and because Svalbard was visa-free, their Russian citizens could live on Svalbard as long as they wanted, which is how we got a fully fledged Russian town right smack in the middle of Norwegian territory. The Soviet Union knew that because Svalbard was visa-free, anyone might come and see their town, and so they purposely engineered it to be an example of communism's supposed success. It had a massive cultural center with an enormous heated pool, a museum, and
Pyramedin. I was about to say it, yep. Pyramiden. I believe it's Pyramedin. Is how you say it.
to make it fun for the kids, a massive imposing bust of Vladimir Putin. At its peak,
because right there in Yes Theory, in the video that I seen not too long ago about it, that was one of the statues that they had seen and were talking about. So I knew where this was going. That's awesome. I'm glad that my knowledge retention holds up pretty well.
peak, over 1,500 people lived in Barentsburg. But as the people at MoviePass can tell you, success doesn't always last. Most of the funding for Barentsburg had to come from the Soviet mainland, because despite the fact that Russians had been doing it for over 90 years, mining in Barentsburg had never once been profitable. Once the Soviet Union fell, there was less need for a Soviet utopia in Norway, so funding decreased and the town began to struggle to stay afloat. Since then, the Russian government has been giving it just enough money to survive, not because they need coal, but because Barentsburg sits in the middle of key sea routes that connect Russia to Western Europe and North America, but it's still only scraping by. Now, with only about 400 people left, Barentsburg has attempted to pivot to tourism, but with little success. There have, though, been some tourists in the past year, including someone named me, when I visited in order to make the second season of my podcast, Extremities. Extremities Season 2 is out and is available at extremitiespodcast.com and on all of these podcast clients.
Well, that's really cool, because if he went there himself, then I give you just as much credit, because that is definitely a place that I would like to go. I would go to Pyramiden and go there. Why not? Life is a adventure, and I'm trying to start my adventure.
It's a show about how and why people live in the most remote and extreme settlements on Earth, and Season 2 is all about Svalbard. The episode we released today talks about Barentsburg and the Russian occupation of Svalbard in much more depth and detail. Plus, in the other episodes of the podcast, I talk about a ton of fascinating things I didn't even get to mention in this video. Polar bear attacks, bank heists, the northernmost hospital in the world, a massive seed vault that some consider to be the most important building on Earth, a secret World War II operation to keep Svalbard out of Nazi hands, and so much more.
Okay, so that was half as interesting with why there's a completely Russian town in Norway. I wish that he had spoken more on Pyramiden, only because that's more of what I knew, or at least what I believe I knew more of. However, it is neat that the things that I'm learning are transitioning to more knowledge, and I'm learning more and more about it. And that's really what a lot of this is about, continuing to learn and grow and explore the world. explore the world through other people's views and opinions and eyes, and then also go and explore the same world through my own lens and through my own opinion and eyes. Speaking of which, I only have about 2.5 weeks left before I travel to Scandinavia and leave the United States for the very first time. It's going to be quite an adventure, and I gotta say I'm excited, nervous, a little bit of scared, and all the different emotions that you could imagine for doing something this big for the first time. I will have a complete travel update here in the next video where I will give you all a pretty good breakdown and itinerary of all the little stops and ideas that I have, but of course I'm going to keep a lot of it a secret at the same time, so that way it makes the videos that I will create a lot more interesting. I hope that you have a great day, great night, whatever time it is that you see this. It's me, Bryson P, and goodbye.